Welcome to Unlearn, where we talk to industry leaders about unlearning how we go to market.
I'm Kelly Sarabin, and I run Tech Partner Enablement and Advocacy at HubSpot.
And I'm Asher Matthew, co-founder of Partnership Leaders.
The old ways of going to market are getting more expensive and less effective.
To thrive in an era of digital transformation, you have to go to market differently. Let's find out how. All right, Kelly, we're back. I see your camera angles changed again.
Is that a thing? My fancy camera battery needs to be recharged, so I'm back to the regular old Mac camera. I will be less high definition if anybody's watching on video.
Got it. All right. Hey, Kate.
Hey, what's happening, Asher? Hey, Kelly.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm low def, super low def today.
I know.
Even in my mind,
You were just telling us about Mr. David Meerman Scott. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with him.
Oh, he's the best. So David Meerman Scott is one of our investors. He's become a friend, actually. And I met him, someone introduced us for investment or to become a customer. So he became a customer. And then 10 seconds later, he's like, I'm investing, pull out all the stops. And he's an amazing, really genuine human who, by the way, has like some crazy hobbies. So he's a massive astronaut and space buff, and he's got all kinds of really cool, things.
Does he have like a super expensive telescope? I feel like that would be required.
He has like, I think the joystick for one of the Apollos, right? Which is pretty cool.
So like paraphernalia.
Like real deal stuff. And then he's a guitar aficionado as well. So he has some amazing guitars, but he wrote this very famous book called Phenocracy, which was all about the fandom of the Grateful Dead. So he's this massive deadheaded as well. So of course, when we met, sparks flew because we had like a million things in common. My uber power is turning listeners into fans or customers into evangelists.
Interesting. And actually, we've had some prior episodes talking to people about the new role of media in B2B SaaS and how companies are often buying that up because they don't have the skill set in-house. But I think there is that strong analogy, right? Like telling good stories, converting to customers and converting to listeners. And what is the same about those skills?
For sure.
I really hate to do this, but I need to tell you guys my David Meerman Scott story.
Oh yeah, you got one? Okay, tell me.
Wait, you guys are gonna love this. Okay.
Wait, so you're a fanboy? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, this guy is unbelievable. I'll tell you, for everybody who's in sales, my big thing is you have to learn marketing. You're not gonna be able to survive in the future if you don't know marketing as a seller. And specifically, David Meerman Scott's specialty is newsjacking. And he's like, how do you take current events, tie your value proposition into them, and then amplify that message and make it resonate with people, right? And he has a number of stories on this stuff, right? Yeah. And so, because I have been very fortunate to have been mentored by a lot of amazing people, my thing has always been let's give back and invest in the future of our leaders, right? And so a very long time ago, and this is probably 10 years ago, I decided to do the Emerging Leaders Day at this thing called the Worldwide Partner Conference, which is Microsoft's partner conference, right? And I saw that the people that attended the conference were all in their 40s and 50s or maybe 60s, and I'm like, these people are going to retire. Where's the next generation of these leaders, right? And I happened to be on the Worldwide Partner Executive Board, and there's 30 CEOs and 27 CEOs and 3 young people, and it was Amy, me, and another gentleman who was also in the Bay Area. And then we were we have to do something for the young people, right? For the people who are going to be more leaders and want to run businesses in the future, right? And so we got permission from Microsoft, as part of their entire conference, they gave us 5 sessions to do, right? And one of them was by Steve Clayton, who's the chief storyteller of Microsoft. He does all of corp comms at Microsoft now, right? But then the other session was David Meerman Scott.
Oh my God.
And so the story gets better because the and this is just like a really good example of like a person who is just working at his prime, right? And this is even like 10 years ago, right? And so the session's on a Wednesday, and David is thinking the session's on a Thursday,
Oh.
and the session's really on a Wednesday. And so we are like, okay, before his session, we will all meet an hour earlier just to get mic check done, make sure he has the black badge to get through the entire conference, because there's like 30,000 people at this conference, right? And David lands, I believe, like an hour and a half earlier than the session. And it's almost like time for us to meet. And we're like, where is David?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like,
Heart
he
attack.
is the guy. And like, there's like 800 people in the audience that are going to be here specifically to watch him, right? So we called David. We're like, David, where are you at, man? He's like, I just landed, and I'm about to go to my hotel. And I thought the session is like tomorrow. And I'm like, no. It's in an hour. And he's like, oh, dang it. And so basically what he did, he's jetted from the airport straight to his hotel. I don't even think he went to his hotel, but like he came straight to the conference, right? The guy is in like cargo pants. Like this is like...
And just keep in mind, Asher was the one that told him the wrong time.
No. This was not me. Like, there's a lot of things that I do, but I'm very punctual because of my like military parents, you know. But the guy
wanted a good story 10 years later.
Well, actually, that would be a great one. Anyways, so like what happens is this guy gets in a cab, comes to the thing, to the conference location. We send special security for him to like bring him out. He doesn't register because like obviously there's like a huge security risk if somebody's entering the conference that big without registering. Comes straight into the session, delivers an amazing presentation, doesn't even miss a single slide.
Wow.
Nails the whole thing. And this is why I'm like, we have to have him on the podcast. Kate, you got to figure out how to get him on the podcast
because I've seen him present before, and I don't think he would mind if I said this, but because I get nervous too. And so, he has stage nerves, and he has a routine to prep like so many people do. I do too, right? And so, that's pretty impressive. He must have gotten a lot done in the cab ride on the way over there.
I'm sure. Did not miss a single slide. The people were like, whoa, this is like great. And 800 people learned about the art of newsjacking, and like they were like trying to figure out. And I think is it the New Rules of Marketing is also a book that he wrote, right? Yeah.
It's in its 8th edition, and lately is featured in the new edition, by the way.
Nice.
So, yeah, he wrote that. It's like, I think it's one of the most famous marketing books, right?
So anyways, like when I heard that I'm a big fan of the guy because I followed a lot of stuff that he did, and like I'm a big fan of newsjacking as well, and I'm sometimes successful at doing it, but that's what I learned it. And this is like 10, 12 years ago. So yeah, we got to have one on the podcast, Kate. You got to get up.
For sure.
So what's your example, Asher?
Back to our regular programming.
Well, so I wanted to touch base though on what Kelly was saying, which is we're still in David Meerman Scotland because he lives and breathes all of this as well. So the parallel that I believe you were touching on is what I call theater of the mind, right? So the theater of the mind is this incredibly powerful gift that we as humans have, where when we're reading or listening, right, your imagination plays a role and fills in the blanks there. And that's why those acts are incredibly more meaningful and memorable than like watching a TV show or a movie, right? Because those are gimmies. You don't have to really do anything. You just veg out. Right. So what I was thinking
depends on the movie, right?
Depends on the movie. Yeah. I mean, if it's Alien,
the veg out ones are like completely formulaic. You don't have to think at all. More independent film dramas where it's like a red balloon like being watched for 10 minutes. Then you got to put in your own imagination.
Right. A lot of imagination. Exactly. So what I was thinking a lot about is, there was that book, This Is Your Brain on Music, and I read it. It's kind of thick, but what fascinated me was this idea, which is when your brain listens to music, Asher, it must instantly, a new song specifically. So you get a new song, your brain's like, where do I index this new song in the library of the memory of my brain? And it's running down every other song you've ever heard before, trying to find familiar touch points so it knows where to log this one. And it's tugging on nostalgia and memory and emotion, which are all the things that build trust, and trust is why we buy, right? Now, similarly, Kelly, when you write a text message or a social media message or an email or a chat, when someone reads it, they hear a voice in their head, your voice, right? And so as the author, it's also your job to figure out how do you tug on nostalgia and memory and emotion and get that trust thing happening there, right? So the commonalities are the same. And this is what we fueled into lately, because my idea was, let's not just go for the sale, let's go for the fan. It's a double win. We want the megaphone, right? And
We
not
just
to
stop
make
the
myself
recording now.
commercial,
I
but
think
yeah.
that was amazing.
Well, I want to give you one more proof in the pudding
Where's
there,
the
okay?
takeaway? God, okay.
So,
I mean, and it sounds
right.
so simple that people should think about this stuff.
No, I think we should dig into it. It's a super fascinating topic, both I think in the context of using AI, but also even outside of that in just the human to human context, which is obviously what most businesses have done before, but also to your point, entertainment, which there's a fine line, right? Because it's an audience and you're trying to establish trust. And I think the challenge, right, in any of those things is you're often trying to establish trust very quickly. You have a very limited window. And so it's an interesting question in terms of how are you framing, I guess when we think about it, what are your thoughts on sort of the best ways to do that human to human? And then we can discuss how does AI come into it, and can AI potentially do it better? Many people in the audience might have read I think it was the New York Times article where the reporter was talking to the Bing chat, and the chat fell in love with him and started sounding really creepy, which was a total misfire. The chat was like, "I don't think your wife is good for you. I'm good for you."
So funny.
That was not the exact words, but it was very creepy. Now, of course, this is all very version 1.0, right? So we can easily imagine those kind of emotionally charged conversations where the AI becomes much more skilled and effective, and people, start to have feelings for the AI. But let's taking a step back, because you also have had a lot of success as a marketer, right? In your prior roles.
Well, wait, before we dive in, I feel like Kate has a little bit more to expand on just the what happens in the mind and stuff. So do you want to continue your thought, Kate?
Well, I'll touch both of the. You guys are so awesome, by the way. Like, I love that we're having a circular conversation, because this is how I think, like, not linearly. So I hope people are keeping up. Which is to say, like, yes. So I wanted to give you a proof point of why what I said works. So at Lately, we only use Lately to market Lately, nothing else. Only organic social media run through our AI that is designed to collaborate with humans specifically, because that power of the theater of the mind, the je ne sais quoi, that third party in the room is so impactful that you see results like a 98% sales conversion, which is what I have, or a 12,000% increase in engagement, which is what we got Gary Vaynerchuk, or a 40x increase in productivity, which is what we get Signify/Philips Electric, right? So, and it's not just because it's ethical to include humans in the process of how AI works. It's because the results are so much more galactic. But to answer your question on the human side, Kelly, here's one of the favorite things that I learned, which is when you're at a conference like the one you were just at, Asher, recently, all the marketers. One of the things you want to be the takeaway, right? You want to be the thing that's memorable, because it's a sea of so much going on. And I've found that it's, especially when we're all often A personalities and like being on stage naturally, it's very easy to walk in the room and be like, hey, right? Like be the loudest person. The harder thing, but the much more powerful thing to do is if you are the person that is the more the magnet in the room that is shining the light on other people, right? So you're making them glow by giving them the spotlight. This is that two-way street that I'm talking about, right? And I'm talking in circles. With the theater of the mind, listening and reading, if you are the author or you are wielding the microphone, you're doing a good job with that nostalgia and motion, etc. The person on the other side feels like they have a part in the conversation, right? They're playing a role here. And the idea is the same thing. If you're surrounded by people and you're making them feel as though they are the ones on the stage, then they walk away with a gift, right? They're a fan now. They're a fan. David Meerman Scott does that.
Interesting. And what does that look like, even in the context of a conference, say? Because I know Asher likes to go in and hold the stage, so that's
Yeah.
That's me. That's exactly me. I feel like maybe Kelly's taking the camera comment too personally today,
But it is interesting because the idea of a magnet, when you think of a magnet at a party, right, you immediately think of, or at least I do, of the person who is telling stories or being funny and very charismatic, and people are coming more to listen. Now, of course, people can talk, which I think is partly what you're saying, and then they feel part of the conversation, even though if you have like a transcript, the other side actually was not contributing as much. But then you have another extreme where people who are just great listeners, right? Mm-hmm. And they really are not producing a lot of content themselves, so to speak. They're actually just really good at listening to the other person, kind of amplifying the other person, and to your point, shining a light on the other person. But I think of those as sort of two different sort of personalities or approaches. Is what you're saying in the middle of those? Is it more the second?
Yeah, that's so smart because, I mean, of course, everyone wants a good audience, so amen to those listeners. But, I think the key is like dropping familiar touch points along the way that make you lean forward and go, oh, me too, right? That's really what you want, that common ground. Who are the people that can find the common ground? Which is why the weather is so beautiful. We started this conversation. Where do you live? How's the weather? Right? That's what you
Those
do.
are the Zoom go-tos for sure. Where are you coming from?
So meaningful. Like it sounds like so dismissive, of course, but I mean, here, how many things have we dropped already in this conversation? We're talking about the Grateful Dead, David Meerman Scott. I've got a Pac-Man poster that's actually velour behind me, child of the 80s, right? We talked about being a rock and roll DJ briefly. Like there's just so many ways that I'm trying to access whoever's listening, whoever's watching, because we know that humans are multifaceted, right? So let's talk about this in the terms of go-to-market. The old way of the message being consistent and the same all the time, that is done. It's done because we think of it as spam now and we're bored. You have to be entertaining online. And humans, this is my friend David Allison's project called Value Graphics. Humans respond to 56 values, like productivity, education, community, stuff like that. And so you have to figure out a way to touch all those values in your conversation, right? And it's complicated. You're weaving a web so that you walk away and think, I love her. I love her. That's what I want. Right.
That's what people normally do when they meet Kelly anyway. So like, it's a very common thing. As we're saying this, I'm just like playing the things in my mind. I'm like, oh yeah.
I think I need to buy lately for my own personal use.
Exactly.
To get myself more friends.
Exactly. Like, of course this happens.
Get the business use case. I'll convert the friends of the playground.
Right. So what you said is actually very interesting because like most, let's call it folks that like want to learn marketing, right? Mm-hmm. They understand at some level, somebody introduces them to empathy, right? The word empathy, right? And then they start thinking about the situation the person is professionally, right? But they rarely think about all the situations that they could be personally, right? and then the voice in the head that they're thinking about, or the theater of the mind, right, as you're saying it, right, is almost always drawn from the professional environment versus the personal environment, right? And what you just hit on, it's a little tough, right? And it's interesting. I was just hanging out with Morgan Ingram last night, right? And he's a very amazing content writer, right? Like he spent a lot of time. When you talk to the guy, you're like, wow, man, you are definitely a content person because you spent hours studying this stuff, right? And he was explaining this concept, saying like, look, you can rise up through all the content folks out there, I would say through 90% of the content folks out there, by just posting consistently, right? Then you can rise up to even like the next, like the 99% of them, by just making sure that you are relatable, right? Like that you've actually understood their situation, right? And then he was like, but there's these Hall of Famers, right? And the Hall of Famers are playing a very different game, right? We couldn't unpack the conversation. Maybe we need to get him on the podcast too. But like, as you're saying this, I'm just thinking about and we have Jamal Reimer on the podcast too. And Jamal's number 2 lesson for me was like, hey, the deal's happening here. It's not happening here, right? and we need to talk about this a lot more from a marketing perspective, so that people can write amazing copy that sticks and then ultimately gets to fandom, right? And people are, unfortunately, a lot of like execs are like, hey, get me leads, ops, and deals and stuff like that. But like, if it was more about like, let's get fans, and people really started focusing on like what's happening in the mind and what are people's life experiences that you need to actually be cognizant of. So when you write amazing copy and you do make creative, that it resonates with all those people, and then they totally 100% agreeing with what you're saying, which is like they volunteer in versus you pull them in, they just volunteer themselves in, right? And it's like a different level of voluntold in a way, right? Because you're telling an amazing story, but it it hits those points, right? Amazing. I mean, it's like I mean, this thing requires hours and hours and hours of work, but obviously you've created a tool that allows people to draw on some of it. So tell us about like how your company even became what it is, and where are you
we should
taking it?
probably do that. Well, and to your point, like, so I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm just gonna say that I am. So like when I write posts on LinkedIn, for example, I get 86,000 views. Right? I'm really good at this, and so lately we taught Lately to learn from me. Actually, like it learns from you first and your best practices, and I'll go over that. But then it defaults to me, and then because I get the 98% sales conversion with my brand, it defaults to that. It's looking for different ways to support you, you know. So Lately is a AI fueled repurposing engine that is also a social media management, employee advocacy, and sales enablement publishing platform. So it's like a lot all at once.
So wait, it learned from you and then basically it's advising, or whoever's using it is essentially becoming more like you in their post.
No, it starts with you actually, and then it just uses me as like a buffer to kind of
mark as to what works essentially.
Yeah. So when you connect your social channels to Lately, and we study everything you've ever published going back for the last year on those channels, and we're specifically analyzing the messaging that performed the best for you, the highest engaging.
Okay.
Yeah, for you. And we're breaking that messaging down into words, ideas, phrases, and sentence structures. So we have a very clear model of literally how you sound, your brand voice, and then exactly what your target audience will like, comment, click, or share. Once we have that, then you ingest long form content like this podcast, for example. We'll transcribe it instantly in the background. We'll read it through with the model in mind. And we lift out the pieces that are in the model, and we clip up the video of who said what at the same time in that little snippet there. Right. And then we'll also do a style transfer, which is we'll take what's written there and kind of youify it. Right. So for me, I say in real life, I curse like a sailor, and I try not to do that online. So I make up things like holy hot pickled jalapeno peppers, stuff like that. And it does that for me. Right?
Yeah. So initially, the client would be the best version of themselves for their current audience that they were reaching.
Yes,
That
and
would that would be like day one of using the tool.
day one, yeah. And unless if they have nothing, then it'll default to me, my brand, and then
And pickles.
and pickles, obviously. Billy Bean's another hot favorite. But then we have millions of data sets from like all the customers we've ever worked with as well. So that's the next moat that it pulls from too.
Scary thought. 2 Kellys. Ooh.
Wait a second. I really want a clone. Are you kidding me?
Wait a second.
I love it when
there's like 100 Kates out there now.
Big
so.
hot pickles.
Like people are like, oh, I don't want AI to replace me. And I'm like, I do. Like, God, just think what I could get done. Jeez.
I feel like your page will become more and more popular because there's now like a sense of familiarity and almost like eventually nostalgia about you because they're like, this sounds vaguely but not exactly familiar. I don't know why. I love this person.
There you go. I mean, the thing that's so important though is this human trainings that we've been talking about, right? This theater of the mind. So what we built into lately was every little thing that you do, it's taking note from. And we surface you even the word clouds, the exact ideas in black and white that are ringing true with your audience. And you get the opportunity to be like, AI, that's awesome. It'll say like, oh, the idea of humans versus AI got 43,000 impressions in 2 posts. Do you want us to do more of this? And you can say, yeah, that's great. And then it could say, well, what about pickles? And you can say, nope, off the rails, right? So there's a massive learning with the human involved. And to touch on the question you had earlier, Kelly, about the New York Times. So let's level set everybody here today real quick. So AI, as we know it in Hollywood, does not exist. That's fake, right? Magic does not exist. I'm so sorry to break this to everyone. A major Harry Potter fan myself, so and I want to believe in magic, but it doesn't exist. If you think
we just lost all our kids,
they're gone. I just killed everybody. I might Avada Kedavra, right? So if you think of like, imagine humans. So as mammals, we're pretty useless. We come out of the womb and we can't feed ourselves, we can't defend ourselves, we can't do anything without care from another human. We're pretty unique in the mammal scape like that. And AI is the same way. And so if you think of AI as a human, it's about 3 months old, right? Requires a lot of care.
But it does talk better than a 3-month-old because as a mother, I was shocked at how little newborns can do or say. Just saying.
Yeah. I think like somebody online, and I feel bad, I should figure out who it was and not take credit for this and give them credit, but they said emotional intelligence is what's missing and that's true. So like we're short on the EI,
Yes, I would assume that is very.
But also you made me think of Silicon Valley because like, have you guys seen it when they fall in love with Fiona? That was weird.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like how do go-to-market professionals, right, actually practice before they even use lately, right? Like practice understanding how to evoke nostalgia in their, let's call it copy or creative or in all their communications, right? Like before I train the AI, I need to actually be somebody who is something like that, because I feel like AI is about to get into a place where people are either going to be scared or be super fans and stuff like that, right? Like, but I think the basic is still like you as a human also need to be cognizant of these things. And so, do you have any thoughts around that, Kate?
Yeah, so I'll give you some quick takeaways. So the rules that I use, I wrote them down and I give workshops, and that's how Crystal and I met. I did a workshop for HubSpot Academy on the rules. So I'll just like kind of give you an example of one. So when I write, I like to drop a lot of these things, these kind of nuggets into the mix, right? So I'm just going to read you a social post I wrote. So Why, how's the weather is the simplest, most powerful question still, plus other sales and marketing pro tips that'll make you go, with moi and Catch Allison. So what I'm doing here is a couple of things. First of all, I'm asking the question why. When you use why, it's always followed by because. We all know this, right? So I'm just tapping in on something that everybody knows, a very familiar kind of thing. And it's tricky like that because I said why, how's the weather is still the most powerful question, but I didn't give the because. I hid the because behind the link, right? Very tricky there. And then I'm using a question, a double question. How's the weather is a question framed inside the question, right? And that is a great way of making people sort of lean forward. They want an answer to the question. I'm saying it still is. I'm making a statement also here. So the statement, even though it's in the form of a question, has the ability to convey authority, but I'm not undercutting my authority, but I'm giving you an access point so you don't feel like I'm commanding you into oblivion because I'm couching it in the face of a question. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm referencing the 90s tips that'll make you go, right? And then I also am referencing the 70s. I think of myself as Miss Piggy a lot, and I refer to myself as moi, right? So there's a whole lot packed into there.
Incredible.
Interesting.
Helpful.
That was, yeah. And so I guess the question becomes, as people go down this path, right? Eventually, you also hit a milestone or maybe like a blocker or maybe like a point where you're like, am I going to lose too much of who I am as I'm going down this path, right? And I want to come to the technology piece of this in a little bit, but I just want to stay focused on the person because, again, like I said earlier on, it's my firm belief that like every salesperson, if they do not learn marketing, are just going to be done, right?
Yeah.
And so, but these things like writing effective copy and understanding how creative actually works, like is really, really important, right? And so, but on that journey, you can lose yourself.
It's really interesting. I think it's so interesting because on the one hand, right, the goal is to establish trust, right? And there's this concept of being an authentic person, but then taking these like 15 to 20 tips and tools and changing your content smacks of artifice. Now, does that mean it's wrong? I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. It doesn't, right? And obviously, I think people who are marketing on behalf of companies and brands expect to do some measure of sort of changing their voice to fit the brand. Having said that, I do think marketers choose to work at companies where there's an alignment between their authentic self and the brand, right? So I used to work at a branding agency and we did a lot of B2B SaaS, but we also did some direct to consumer. And I remember doing like a craft beer. And because it was just a branding like commitment, so it was like 3 to 6 months and one project, I was okay to do it. But I was like, never in a million years could I like work full time for this company because I'm not hip in this way. I'm not like cool. And like that was the brand voice. It was very artificial for me. Which doesn't mean it can't be done, right? But it feels inauthentic. So I love Asher's question because I do feel from the human level, even just as workers, what is the connection in your mind between intentionally thinking about the theater of the mind and using that and your knowledge of it to create trust and connection in such a intentional way?
Yeah. So, and it's the nuance there, which is the intention of the persona. So when I'm on the air, you're listening to XM50, The Loft, right? That's my persona. That's my on-air persona. It's me, but it's a different slice of me. The person that I just read to you online, that's me, but that's very specifically my online persona, right? It's like, when we go to a wedding and I put on a dress and heels, my elbows are off the table, until we've had too much champagne, probably. But I'm sitting up straight, all those things. But, tonight on the couch, I'm going to be in my jammies and having tequila with no mixer, probably, because that's how I feel like rolling on a Friday night, So I think it's and David Meerman Scott, by the way, is the same way. The guy who's on stage is a different guy that I, went for a hike with in Woodstock a couple months ago with, right? It's
I think that's super valid point. And I think if you look at like method actors, that's the extreme, right? Because they're acting, but then they're literally adopting and living another persona in their life. But when you think about how people live and work right now, right? Your job may be, let's just say 50 hours of your week, right? That's a lot of time to embody what may only be 10% of your personality.
Yeah,
So
I mean, this is the game, right? Like, you're right. When you're in sales, especially though, you have to turn it on. Like, for example, at the end of the day, we always sit and watch TV because I just talked all day long. I'm on all day long. I'm putting on a show here. I'm putting on a show with investors. I'm putting on my CEO hat with my team. Like, I got to be these different people all day long, and it's effort, major
But
effort.
what
I
if
don't
you
want to talk
didn't have to
to
put a
anybody.
show on? What if people were, that's just who you were, and maybe that's where you ultimately
Well,
get to.
yeah, I mean, I'm cheapening it by saying that it is who I am, but it's a certain part of me that I need to highlight to get this specific thing done, right? Because, I mean, our whole lives I believe this is going to make somebody mad. I feel like everybody's life is about getting something done. We're all trying to get something done, lots of things done. And so communication is about that objective. I want you to love me. I want you to take out the trash. I want you to make this sale. I want you to fund my company, whatever it is. I want you to be a good guest on my show. And you have to you have to think about, how do I get that person to do what I want specifically? Because the way I motivate Kelly is different than the way I motivate Asher. Right? And if you're not doing that, it's not going to work for you. That's why some people are really good at this and some people are not.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I have a very hard time thinking that way, but I will say I know that it, quote, costs me even in my job, which is not a sales job. And that's also why I know I'd be a terrible salesperson, because I feel like I am too honest of a person, and don't have very I don't have very good artifacts.
Wait a second.
All right.
Asher knows this well, that I'm too honest of a person.
That's hilarious.
Where are we going in this podcast? Hold on.
I know, but I was a philosophy major, and I feel like this episode is tapping into my college days.
That's so hilarious.
We just went from like, let's help you be the best version of you, to like, salespeople are liars. Got it. Okay.
No, they're one part of themselves to get the job done, which I think is an accurate statement.
I think so, Kelly. Though real quick, you're very intelligent, clearly, and so to lean on that skill when you need something that you can use it for. So, like, I personally put both feet in my mouth most of the time. I just do, but I use it, right? Because I already know that's my default. That just is how I am. And so that kind of, aw shucks, whoops charm, like, it gets me a lot of stuff. I mean, it does, right? So I don't bother to correct it because shit works for me.
I think where I'm at in this podcast is like, if you want to exist, you're very welcome to like just be you and just be all about you and just go through life, and you're going to achieve some level of success. We just don't know what it is, right? And you may not achieve it all, right? But if you want to live, right, then you must care. And if you must care, then there's no like level of caring. It's you either care or you just don't care. And if you care, you must actually deliver your thoughts in a way that people would talk to themselves, and understanding where they're coming from personally and professionally is like really important. And when you do that, it'll start showing up in your copy and your creative, which if you're a salesperson, you absolutely need to be able to present your thoughts in the way that other people know how to understand, because you are trying to get them to understand your point of view. And if you're a marketer, you must write extremely amazing, clear, specific copy. It doesn't have to be hype, but it has to be very clear. And you're not going to be able to write it if you don't know where they're coming from, right? And so the two skills have to come together. Literally, this is deja vu because we were just talking about this yesterday as well. It's like copywriting, creative, presenting. If you just do those three things well from the perspective of like how another person likes to hear about themselves from their own perspective, you will win, right? And that's what I think that the where we are in this like economic slowdown, et cetera, reset, whatever you want to call it, right, is we have an opportunity to actually live and not just exist, which I think was what we were already doing, because it's all about hype, T2, D3, this, grow. And you just don't have to live by those rules anymore. You can actually just become a really amazing copywriter, a really amazing creative person, and a really amazing presenter. And most people will do really well just by being averagely better than on these three skill sets. What do you think?
I think I was thinking about the mirror as you were saying that, right? So everybody likes to look in the mirror because we're narcissists by default,
Just throwing that out there.
Just throwing it out there. So
everybody listening, you're a narcissist.
Well, because on Zoom is, here we are. What are we on? We're not on Zoom, but like it's the same idea.
Every 5 minutes, I'm like, which part of our audience?
We're gonna have to go to confession after this. Jesus.
It's like there's no magic. You're all narcissists.
I know, liars. It works.
Kids are not allowed to listen to this podcast. Like,
Jesus. But I mean, so you're looking at how often do you look at people in the eye on the camera? You're looking at yourself. I mean, it just happens. That's a human nature, and so it's like. Generally speaking, people like to talk about themselves. Everybody knows that. You go to a party, you just ask questions, and you're off to the races. So I think so there's that obvious thing, but the other thing you made me think about was I don't know if it's like to me to be human and to be good at your job, which is kind of tied together. You're always aspiring to be better, right? Like that's part of the human experience. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to try to get onto the road. That's the road you're on. It's like getting 1% better every day, or whatever the mantra is there. And if you're not living if that's not in your aspect. So if you want, why wouldn't you want to be a better communicator? Which by default makes you a better salesperson, because. All communication is some kind of sale, right? Get me to do something. Give me your money.
For the record, I believe Kelly would be an amazing salesperson if she actually really wanted to, but she doesn't want to be that. So that's like the problem. Yeah. So
but no sales.
I agree with you. I think it's like everybody wants to do better. I think it's also trained behavior because we've been trained like that through school, right? But I think everybody just wants to live because, and if all of the constructs that we've been taught just vanished, right? We would just actually act like normal people, right? Like, which would be, let's go live and build shared experiences. And some of those are going to be great and some of those aren't going to be great. But the ones that aren't great, we're just going to learn from them and not do them again, because that's how humans are trained, right? Like when the first time you hit fire, or you touch fire, you're like, oh shit, I'm just not going to do that again, right? And it just doesn't make any sense, right? And so, or if I mean, this is going to resonate with a few people, hopefully, and not alienate people, like we've been doing the rest of this podcast. But
you're going to title this podcast.
You're all narcissist, and there's no magic.
As you go through life, right? And for the folks that have kids, right? Like there's more people that have 2 kids than have like 3 kids, right? But the thing here is like after you've had a couple of kids, right? And you try to get like your life back together. Most people, I believe, don't have kids after that because they're like, oh, we understood that experience. It was great. But we also understand that we want to live the rest of our life also with shared experiences with the four. And a lot of the families that do, and I'm sure there's data around this, but like a lot of the families that actually go in that direction do end up like being very invested in their kids, and then the kids become amazing humans and they go on to do great things, versus the people that like falter back on and have a lot more kids. And again, as I say, this is probably a very controversial statement as I'm making it, but the goal here is like the body is designed to not do things when it learns that like that there's a better way to do things, right? So I'll pause there because I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate mail on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hope that people learn. I mean, that's not everybody I feel has that great skill. And I think that is a skill. We've been talking about that at my company as well. Like, when I've said this before, when we hire people, our expectation is that the worst mistake you will make is still going to be just fine, right? So we very much prize the idea of just doing it, figuring it out. Like, ask for permission. No, don't ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness, and just go make a bunch of mistakes and learn from them. And when we know right away when we meet people and we've hired them and that's not working out, because it shows us that they can't self learn in this way. And in a startup, we don't have time to teach them, right? So it's a super catch-22, because not everybody is built like that, which is totally understandable. There's nothing wrong with that, but in order to fail fast and fix it, and
it would be okay in another company, just not in a startup. And then again, I think intentionally understanding why you are in a situation which is designed to grow fast and make it or break it, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people understand this. Actually, like when this whole SVB debacle happened, right? And I was standing in line outside of an SVB, and there's like 30 founders, and I'm just like, 40% of you people should never have raised money, because you just added a lot of like anxiety into your life and a lot of like urgency in your life for no reason, because they were going to be okay. And then when you ask them like, hey, how much money do you actually want in life? They would throw these random numbers out, and they're like, well, they don't even know what they would do with it, right? And so like the whole intentionality about like, why am I even in a startup? And does the startup actually align with what I want to do? And does the values of the company align with who I am? If a lot of more people kind of like started dotting this stuff out, you would have a lot more successes than the scary stories that we hear. And I do think that that's where we are right now. Like, people are actually really questioning, like, why are they even in this thing? Specifically because a lot of founders are actually returning money that they raised from venture. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that happening right now.
Yeah. What are you going to say, Kelly? You look inspired.
Oh, I wasn't inspired by that point. I've been thinking about something else I want to go back to for a while. So if you have a response but I agree. I would just say I agree that not everyone fits in an early stage startup, and nor does everyone have that sort of need to progress. I think probably the three of us do on this call, but I think that's a personality trait. I think some people are very content to go into the same office and do their work and get off at 5 p.m. Don't think about it again until 9 the next morning, which again is fine. I don't think that I think society needs all different personality types, right? Like, you got to fit in where you go, and that's how society runs. But what I want to return to is this personalization thread, right? So I feel like in marketing, we're in very early days around personalization. So what we have is websites that can personalize based on who's visiting. That's probably the most interesting thing that I think has some wide level of adoption. Obviously, we have smart content in emails as well, where we can flip up the content depending on who's receiving it. Sales, there's a wide spectrum. You still see a lot of people company first name, like very rudimentary attempt at personalization, even though everyone I think acknowledges it's table stakes to use it in marketing and sales. But when you look industry wide, I would say we're not that far down that journey yet. I think AI could open up a ton of really amazing but potentially hard to manage possibilities of, say, LinkedIn eventually makes it where you can change up your post to be surfacing to different audiences that you've selected, right? What's really interesting is a lot of what I hear you saying with the theater of the mind is it's about tapping into those individuals' triggers, right? So some people might not know much about 70s bands or Miss Piggy. Like, so those things aren't going to be as much of a sticky for them. It might still be endearing because it is, but like, I think if we go far down that road of personalization powered by programmatic tools, essentially, we could see a world where companies can whip up a crazy level of personalization and have their own brand voice kind of modified in the way that you were saying earlier, where you have a slightly different brand voice to persona X, to your RevOps person, but then to the marketer or the salesperson, your brand voice changes a little bit. So I'd love to hear your thoughts as someone who's probably on the forefront of thinking about those issues. A, where are we in that? Do you agree with kind of how I described the landscape? And then B, where do you think we're going?
Yeah, I love the way you speak. I'm stealing little ideas from you the whole time, by the way.
Take them.
I do agree with you. I mean, yes, I feel like generally the personalization or customization now is fairly rudimentary. We're all onto it, right? And which is why we haven't done any cold emails. Like, we're doing one weird experiment at the moment, which I don't want to be doing at all, but it's a long story why we're doing it. So, OpenAI doesn't have the ability to customize to your voice right now. It can't understand your audience because there's no learning loop of data there. So, you and I put in this same inputs, generally we'll get the same outputs out. It's very much like Cliff Notes, right? With ChatGPT, we were in their closed beta when it was ChatGPT 2, so 4 years ago. So we're OGs, but all these other, even Jasper, by the way, included, like, they don't own the engine. ChatGPT is an engine that it's a car they're driving, they can change the color of the paint of the car. That's it. And the engine also only has data that's always a year old, so it's not up to date, right? So my machine learning and natural language processing is 9 years old, and it's mine. Like, the whole engine is mine, right? And then because we're able to customize your voice, you're making fun of me, learn your voice and learn your audience. My friends at Microsoft were actually asking me, like, how can Lately expand the impact of OpenAI? And this is how, right? So I'm convinced that I'm not even convinced. I know that the future of AI is AI and humans together, and I've already been living that for 9 years, and everyone else has to catch up.
Yep. And so
Come on, Asher, get with it.
I know.
You're holding a society back.
I know we're going to run out of time, but
shoot! I didn't realize.
Yeah, as we're working through this whole AI thing, I do believe that there is the concept of private AI that is going to come up at some point in time, and it's because of what you just said. There's going to be models that are just very customized for certain situations, right? But there's also people's data that they're just not going to be comfortable in sharing it across this, let's call it, escrow of data that we are feeding into this giant AI, right? And so, and it happened with cloud also, right? I mean, it's no different than that. And by the way, data scientists have been working like this forever. I mean, and that's kind of the basis of all AI anyways, right? And so like, there's the general consumption, let's call it AI, totally, that will help us do things better. But then there is going to be this like niche AI that is designed for like certain scenarios, and maybe like I don't know, at some point in time, it's just AI and like all this stuff. But I don't think that's in the near future that's going to be a thing. But to answer the personalization question, at least from my viewpoint, is like, well, if everybody uses the same personalization for AI, and the AI is designed to like look at what's the trending topic, then we're kind of back into like unpersonalized emails anyways, because they're all going to look like the same thing, and they're going to be like spam, like in a way.
Exactly.
So the humans for sure are going to be
they're all talking pickles to each other.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
It's one great loop of pickles. No, but Asher, I think you answered your own question. It's these unique data sets, right, that could provide the competitive edge for people to go ahead, which it sounds like that's how Kate's tool works, essentially making a person the best version of themselves while no one else is taking all of those persons' posts and viewing them. Although things that are public in the future may indeed be consumed other places, but I think there's always additional data that you could, for example, be pulling from people's papers, how they are in their Slack internal channels, talking, like wherever they want to get like a unique data set.
Yeah.
All right, I only have 1 minute left. So if it's okay, we're going to have to bring Kate back on because I think in this journey, like, of how do we use AI, I think there's like other learnings that we'll get. But Kate, before we let you go, outside of Mr. David Meerman Scott, are there 2 other people that you would recommend bringing on the show now that you know how Kelly and I do these things?
Oh boy!
Who won't be turned off by our free-flowing conversations.
Yes. Well, for sure, my friend David Allison, who I mentioned, he consults the United Nations, and value graphics is his baby. It's the death of demographics, right? So it's the idea of predicting human behavior based on what they care about, as opposed to their name and their date of birth or their sex or their location. Because, the 3 of us are in different places. We all look different. We're different ages. We come from different backgrounds, but we have a lot of commonalities we discovered here today, right? And so it's much more valuable to understand how we're making decisions based on what we care about than our eye color. So definitely David would be a good one. And then I'm going to have to think about the other one. Yeah, let me get back to you. I want to recommend a wonderful woman, and I'm trying to decide which one. So let me get back to you on that.
Okay, well, you can recommend 2 also. We're here all day. Well, not all day, but
Rachel will send you fake personalized cold emails following up for your 3rd one.
Right. Exactly. Yes. Your name.
Hi, person. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed being a guest on our podcast as well, and we really enjoyed learning from you.
Yeah, back at you guys. You guys are super cool, and I hope I get to meet you in person sometime. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to Unlearn. Subscribe wherever you listen and visit unlearnpodcast.com for the transcripts.